connection got wonky, but Super Bowl hangover for the Patriots. How do you think they'll bounce back this year after being so close but not getting that Lombardi trophy?
Yeah, I feel like right now it feels a little bit like we're just waiting for the important stuff to happen at training camp. I think kind of feels like the good old days, honestly, like where you kind of feel like the Patriots will be in the mix at the end of the season, and we'll see what happens in January and hopefully February as well. But it doesn't feel like a team with a Super Bowl hangover because they have so many new faces. And I think Mike Vrabel did a nice job of that in the offseason of not getting complacent and just running the team back that they had last year. And so you have A.J. Brown now, you have Romeo Doubs, you have changes on the offensive line. So they have some fresh faces and some motivated people that weren't necessarily in the building last year.
They do, yeah. It's no Stephon Diggs. We know he goes to Washington. A.J. Brown's a huge new addition for this Patriots offense. Do you think that Drake May and this offense take an even bigger leap this season with A.J. Brown back, now reunited with Mike Vrabel?
That's the hope, and I think, Drake May's specialty is obviously throwing the ball deeper down the field, and A.J. Brown just fits that like an absolute glove, is a go-ball guy that can go up and win the football and battle down the field with defensive backs. So they really feel like they fit together extremely well. We saw some of that last year with guys like Kayshon Boutte, but, hopefully the Kayshon Boutte role is elevated to a Pro Bowl caliber player like A.J. Brown. So that, I think, is what the hope is there. Now, I will say, and I'm not pressing any panic buttons, but it hasn't always been super smooth yet in training camp. And I think you do see some of these new faces taking some time to integrate into the offense. So it hasn't necessarily been lighting the world on fire yet in practice. I fully expect that to happen eventually. But if we get to September and maybe there's still some growing pains, you guys will know why because we talked about it.
Absolutely right. How has morale been? How have things been around camp, Evan? Without getting into too many details, everybody knows what happened in the offseason surrounding sure. Coach Mike Vrabel. But how has this team and organization been able to eliminate said distractions that occurred in the offseason?
Yeah, honestly, I haven't really gotten any feeling or sense or whatever that's still lingering. It hasn't been asked at a press conference in forever. We're not really focused on it here locally. I think that's probably, I was watching the Hall of Fame game last night and they brought it up on the broadcast. I think that's probably more of a national conversation right now. Now, come back to me in October if they're 1-4. Maybe we'll be having a different conversation. But as of right now, I haven't heard a single peep about any of that for quite some time.
Well, that's good. You can just focus on football. Makes your job and everybody's job easier. So we always like that. We're about a month away from the opener on the 9th. We're Wednesday, Patriots at Seahawks on September 9th, which is amazing to think about. I mentioned the offense a little bit, and we'll get to the running backs in just a sec too. But defensive side of the ball, you got Christian Gonzalez. You got a lot of other good pieces there as well. How good does the defense look? Do you think it's going to be more of the same last year with a team that can take the football away and really limit the opponent's scoring?
Yeah, honestly, if I had to say which side of the ball has won these training camp practices, if you're into that sort of thing, I would say the defense has had the upper hand in a lot of these sessions. Now, that makes sense. They brought pretty much the entire defense back and kind of just added to it. So it's not like they took out pieces like a Stephon Diggs or something like that on that side of the ball. But Christian Gonzalez's contract was a big topic coming into training camp and whether or not he would hold in or hold out or any of those things. And he's practicing and doing and saying all the right things as that negotiation is ongoing. So they've looked really good in these practices. And you see some of the things that we saw in the playoffs last year, a lot of blitzing, a lot of aggressive man coverage, causing chaos in the front, because I do think the one thing that they're probably missing on defense is that true double-digit sack guy off the edge. They don't have a Myles Garrett. They don't have, a Micah Parsons-like player on the edge of the defense. So they're going to have to scheme up pass rush. They're going to have to rely on those two guys, Christian Barmore, Milton Williams, in the middle of the defensive line to cause havoc. But it's not going to be one of those teams that I necessarily expect to lead the league in sacks. I think it's going to be one of those disruption types of teams that relies on their secondary to do the heavy lifting.
Talking with Evan Lazar, beat reporter from Patriots.com, also the host of Patriots Catch 22. Check it out; it's good stuff. Follow him on Twitter at EZLazar. How about the backfield? We know the Patriots love to be dual threat. They finally used midway through the season Trevion Henderson last year. We know Ramondre Stevenson's still there as well. Do you expect more of that split carries, kind of by committee in the backfield this season, Evan?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think last year was kind of weird because they didn't really have both those guys going at the same time.
Right.
As good as they were offensively, Trevion Henderson went off in the middle of the year. He had that big month of November where he was Rookie of the Month and all that kind of stuff. And then it sort of tailed off, and Ramondre Stevenson really picked it up in the playoffs and really the last couple weeks of the regular season. But in the playoffs, it was Ramondre Stevenson's backfield. And I think a lot of that was because of all the other details, pass protection, route running, like things like that Ramondre Stevenson was just a little bit further ahead of a rookie at that point in time. But I think this year they're hoping that they're going to have that, thunder and lightning thing going where they have both those guys going at the same time. So that's been a big emphasis for Mike Vrabel going back to right after the Super Bowl when they lost the trenches battle to Seattle. Mm-hmm. They have to run the football better. They have to be more physical on the line of scrimmage offensively. They've made adjustments. They've made offensive personnel additions like Reggie Gilliam, the fullback from Buffalo. So they are really trying to emphasize, and I just add one more thing. They've been in pads in 7 of the last 8 days at training camp. So they're getting after it physically in these training camp practices because I think Mike Vrabel does not want to be one of those teams that doesn't win the line of scrimmage.
Hi, Evan. Nick here. First of all, thanks for taking a few minutes out of your day to come chat with us. Obviously, coming into this year after the Super Bowl run that the Pats went on last year, one of the biggest glaring weaknesses that this team had was the lack of the offensive line protection for Drake May. I believe he was the most under duress, pressured quarterback throughout that entire playoff run that the New England Patriots went on last year, constantly having guys breathing down his neck, getting pressured, getting hit in the backfield. With the big splash where you guys get Will Campbell from out of LSU at the offensive tackle position, you also get center Jared Wilson out of Georgia. Talk to me a little bit about what you're seeing from them early on in preseason in training camp and what your expectation is for this offensive line coming into the season and how much of a focal point it will be in order to replicate their success from last year.
Yeah, I think it's a couple of things. One, they moved Jared Wilson over to center. So he's back at his natural position where he played at Georgia at center last year. For his rookie season, the entire year, he was playing at left guard next to Campbell. So now, sandwiched between Campbell and Wilson is Elijah Vera Tucker, who they signed over from the Jets, a former first-round pick. So they're hoping that Jared Wilson going back to his natural position makes Jared Wilson better, but also that configuration of Campbell, Vera Tucker, Wilson is better than Wilson and Campbell playing next to one another. So I think that was something that they're hoping is just going to kind of raise all tides there by making that configuration change. I've been really encouraged by what I've seen from Will Campbell in training camp. Now, he didn't practice today. He's dealing with a minor injury to his arm. Mike Vrabel said he'd be back next week, but he did sit out today's practice. But overall, he looks healthy, which was a question mark in the playoffs last year. He was playing on a MCL injury, so he looks healthy. He looks more in control, more sure of himself, more confident. Now, I'll put this caveat on it. I just talked about the pass rush on the other side of the ball. The Patriots don't exactly have a murderer's row of edge rushers in this camp, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not like he's going up against a stacked group on the other side. So that's what I'm really looking forward to seeing. They have a joint practice on Tuesday with the Indianapolis Colts, and then the following week, they have 2 joint practices back-to-back with the Philadelphia Eagles. So he's going to see some different teams, some different edge rushers, and maybe some more talented guys, especially in those Eagles joint practices. Well, we'll get a real barometer of how much better Will Campbell is in his second season. But he has definitely looked far and away much better than he did compared to the guy that we saw in the playoffs last year. So the hope is that these changes up front, these reconfigurations with Barrett Tucker coming over, and then obviously Campbell being healthy, that offensive line will figure itself out.
Evan, we know how big of a deal fantasy football is around here, and I know I'd ask you the occasional question or two about players on the Patriots last year. So with that being said, it's early. People are getting ready to draft. You're the so to speak expert. You're around the team. You see a lot more than we do. Throw out a couple names that you think people should be really having on their radar from the Patriots offense. We know their defense is going to be picked. I mean, that's a given, but who are a couple offensive players that people should consider rostering on their fantasy teams from New England?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you're going to draft May, you're going to draft A.J. Brown. I think that goes without saying.
Oh, sure.
I still think, I was looking at some things for myself, actually, for my fantasy drafts, and I think Ramondre Stevenson is pretty undervalued right now in fantasy because of Henderson. Like, everybody just expects Henderson to have this huge role, which he will, but I think Stevenson's still going to have a huge role, too. The one guy, and I know that, fantasy is pretty shallow at tight end. Like, I still think Hunter Henry, even at his age, is somebody that Drake May relies a ton on. Just a really consistent, reliable player, maybe not the most explosive, but kind of a safety blanket for Drake May. So I don't think that Hunter Henry's role or targets are going anywhere. I fully expect him to have a similar season to what he had last year, simply because the quarterback trusts him and they have a great relationship. So I would say that at a position where I know that there's not a ton of depth at across the league in terms of fantasy, I would definitely think tight end with Henry is a possible, he might be a top 10 tight end in fantasy this year.
Take some notes, people. Hopefully you are. To our listeners out there, that's good stuff. Ramondre Stevenson, Hunter Henry, perhaps. Consider, as this is a big month for fantasy drafts, a month away from the start of the season. Sticking with the AFC East, Evan, here. Buffalo, new coach. They don new uniforms. They've got a new stadium. But Josh Allen is still there. He's not getting any younger, right? And it used to be the division runs through Buffalo. Well, New England had something to say about that last year. How big of a threat do you think Buffalo will be this year? We know it's a new head coach, but they brought in DJ Moore, and 17 is still under center at quarterback too.
Yeah, I mean, look, whenever you have Josh Allen, you're going to be a threat. That just goes without saying, and I think the Patriots definitely view it that way. As long as Josh Allen is upright and playing quarterback for the Bills, that's going to be the Patriots' biggest hurdle to winning that division. I am really fascinated to see what Buffalo does on defense, though, because Jim Leonard comes over as their defensive coordinator under Joe Brady. He's changing that entire scheme. They're going from a 4-3 team to a 3-4 team. I just know that with McDermott for the last decade or however long McDermott was there, feels like it was a decade, that they were just a 4-3 nickel type of team, right? Like they just played the same defense every single year under McDermott. So this is going to be a different look and a different type of scheme. So I'm fascinated to see how that translates and the personnel moves that they've made on defense, how that works out for them. Because even though that defense fell off last year, that's been a really consistent defense under McDermott for years. So we'll see how that goes. But, yeah, I mean, look, they played two really great games against Buffalo last year. The Patriots got them in Buffalo early in the season on a game-winning drive by Drake May late in the fourth quarter. Then Buffalo came storming back. The Patriots boat raced them in the first half. I think they were up 21-0 at one point.
Yeah.
And Buffalo came back in the second half and won that game. So those were two really good football games, back-and-forth games, and I'm sure that the two this year will be the same way.
Have no doubt that they'll deliver. Lastly, before we let you go quick, Evan, the overwhelming theme on our show and, kind of in Connecticut at the fringe and the bridge of the gap between New York and Boston, the Red Sox have dominated the summer. We know the Patriots are coming, but I think people are forgetting about them for a little bit because of how good the Red Sox have been, winning 26-29. I saw you were tweeting about them a little bit as well. Have you been able to get to a game? Yeah. And if not, what's the buzz been like in New England stratosphere about the Red Sox and the epic summer they're having?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just utter disbelief. This team was literally dead in the water.
That's right.
Say right around June, not too long ago. There are people going to games, guys, at Fenway chanting "Sell the team," wearing bats over their heads, like the whole thing. Right? They were ready to run John Henry out of town.
Yeah.
All of that. I have never seen a turnaround in my lifetime of covering and watching and rooting for Boston sports here in Boston like this. I think that the 0-1 Patriots are talking about this actually at training camp today. The 0-1 Patriots started 1-3. Brady comes in, they win 13 games, they win the Super Bowl. That was a magical run. But they changed quarterbacks, and they had that's a pretty significant change. Now, the Red Sox changed managers, so I guess that's kind of similar to changing quarterbacks. That's the only one that I can really think of. The Patriots the year before were 5-11 in Bill Belichick's first season. They start 1-3. There's talks about Belichick, believe it or not, getting fired already, in year 2 of his tenure. And then they go on this magical run and win the Super Bowl, and the rest is history. So we'll see if the Red Sox can finish it off. But that's the only one that I can think of in at least recent Boston sports history that is anything like what we're seeing with the Red Sox right now. I think they're 31-5 in their last 36 games.
Yep.
They've won 7 or 8 in a row this time. They won 15 in a row not too long ago. It's incredible. I've never seen a turnaround quite like this one. And baseball here in Boston is so unique. It really does take over the city with the Red Sox when the Red Sox are good. I think it's a football town in a lot of ways, but it's always going to be a baseball town too.
Team of Destiny, many are calling it. Enjoy the ride with this Red Sox team, Evan, and keep up the great work between now and the start of the regular season for the New England Patriots. Being that we're a Patriots affiliate, I'm sure we will have you on throughout the season. But appreciate the time. Glad we overcame the phone struggles. The people needed to hear what you had to say, as always, Evan. But all the best, my man. We'll talk soon. Thanks for hopping on.
Sounds good, guys. Thanks for having me.
You got it. Evan Lazar. Good